Thank you, Pat. As Pat said, my name is Dave Nails. I'm with InnovMarine. We are the SSI reseller in Canada. We have a rather interesting presentation here for you this afternoon. As I like to say, something completely different. It's a piece of software for cable management. We're going to get into that. Joining me shortly is Mr. Barnes from Cloudis. He's the director of Cloudis. He'll be getting into some of the technical aspects of the solutions. And then our good friends at Hostel have agreed to share a little bit of their journey so far in their implementation and use of CMPIC. So I'm kind of the warm-up act for the real deal, and I'm going to get started by, shall we say, asking a few questions. So we've done. So just so everybody knows, we've actually not done this together before, so this will be our first try at this. So forgive us if we stumble a little bit. So, all right, I'm going to start by asking people to think about cable management. So when you think about cable management, what are some of the things that come to mind? Oxymoron, what others do but we don't. Not my problem. I'm in design. We try not to think about it too much for some obvious reasons. And I think the last one is a line stolen from a recent article that Ian was featured in. Who thinks cable management is sexy? Anybody in this room? We need to talk. All right. Let's face it, it's not one of those things that gets talked about an awful lot, but we know it's a very important part of our work. So hopefully by the end of this presentation today, we've shared enough things with you that kind of raises the profile of cable management to something slightly above sexy. Okay, how many people in this audience today routinely route more than 5,000 cables? Put up your hands. No? Really? 2,500? Okay. Would like to see their cable management headaches reduced or even eliminated. Actually, let me stop for a moment and ask how many people here are from the electrical engineering department, are involved in cable management? Excuse me. Okay, so we don't have a lot of folks from the electrical department here. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to take all this message back to the folks in your electrical engineering department so that they get to hear it firsthand from yourself. Okay, last line of course is we'd like to gain some insights into the business case for integrated automated cable management. That's what our friends at Oslo are going to share with us. Okay, so I'm going to put a few company names up here. And I'm going to ask if anybody knows what all these companies have in common. We all recognize some of the names. All right. Well, what they all have in common, as I'm sure you figured out, is they are all users of CMPIC. And collectively, over the last 20 years, they've used CMPIC on probably 150 more projects and have routed and installed over 2 million cables. So what is the takeaway from that? It's a tried and true tested application used by some of the largest shipbuilders and engineering firms in the world, and it works. Second takeaway is these folks recognized that there was a need to enhance their cable management procedures, methods, tools, and so on and so forth. And they did so by embarking on a plan to implement and use CMPIC. Okay, so the question that some people might ask is why cable management? Read the points up there in front of you, you probably understand why. Now, I know there's not a lot of folks from the electrical department here, but pretend you were for a moment. We all know that naval vessels tend to be very, very complex and have large quantities of cables to be routed. Then when you add to this the complexity of doing that, ensuring technical integrity, material cost optimization, calculating weight distribution, all those things that the folks in the electrical department will understand is essential, then you begin to understand why having a better way of doing cable management is worthy of a discussion. And as Mr. Barnes will often say, it's for that reason, the more complex your projects are, the more likely it is you might want to speak with us. So we're going to get into some of that through the next portion of the presentation. So I'm going to turn this over to the folks in the electrical department. What would it mean to you if you could schedule the creation of devices cable routes, route approvals, generation of pull sheets in a highly disciplined, or in other words, a rules-based, spec-driven fashion. We all have our spreadsheets, we all have our equipment catalogs, we all have those. But when there's no way to ensure that we're only using the approved equipment in our designs, then it becomes problematic. CMPIC takes care of that. It only allows you to schedule and include equipment that is in your approved catalogs. What if you could track and manage every action carried out on a cable, right through sophisticated status management? So at any given time, you can query the status of a cable that's a part of your design. What would that mean to you if you could do that? For those of us who do multiple vessels within a class, we know this thing's called configuration management. Manage all those cables which are common to a vessel within a class, as well as those which are vessel or vessel specific. Right? So that'd be nice to be able to do that. Automate the capture of pulling information using barcode scanning. The more we can eliminate manual data entry, manual data capture, and use barcoding, which has been around for years, then we're doing what? We're adding automation to our procedures and methods, reducing the amount of manual intervention. And of course, this is an SSI conference, so if we could integrate that seamlessly with our ShipConstructor environments, what would that mean to our cable management workflows? Okay. Nope, that's it. So I'm now going to turn it over to Mr. Barnes, who's going to take us through a little bit of a discussion of CMPIC, and then Brent will be talking about Austin Street.
Okay, this is skimming over the surface what the product does. Give you some idea. So CMPIC's a database product. It works with CAD systems, in particular ShipConstructor and others, and meets cable requirements for large projects, large in shipbuilding and petrochemical, oil and gas, and so on. At the moment, we're involved in a large number of shipbuilding projects. We're involved in a couple of nuclear power station projects. So as Dave says, the software is tried and tested, over 2 million cables routed over a period of 20-odd years. It consists of 2 modules: design, which is what we're primarily interested in here, which is the creation of what we call the nodal network, in other words, the topology of where cables could run. So this is the topology created in ShipConstructor, either using HVAC or using space allocations. It's where cables could be, not necessarily where they will be, because there are lots of things we need to take into account. Lengths of cables, segregation of cables, weights of cables, volume of cables, centers of gravity, so on and so forth. All these kind of things are taken account of in our product. Importantly, we also have another module which is intrinsically linked in the same database to design, and that's for production. So once the cables have been routed, the guys in planning, production planning, can look at those cable routes and say, what I'm looking for are all the cables that are of this segregation that pass through this transit and go between these 2 devices. Because I want to install all those cables together. I want to seal that transit. I want to leave those cables coiled for the next guys to take over. All that kind of thing is taken care of in our product. If there's an issue with production, then the production people can raise an issue which design can then take a look at. So that, being in one database enables that communication to take place. In terms of CMPIC itself works on logical connectivity. In other words, I have a tray here, or I have a set of hangers. Those sets of hangers go in 2 different directions. Those 2 different directions may have different sets of segregations. Now, once I have that topology, as I say, logically, where can my cables best be routed for the optimal volume, weight, fill, segregation, spacing, and so on. In terms of getting data into CMPIC, we have database to database, which is the way that we work with ShipConstructor SQL to Oracle. We can use XML, CSV files, APIs from CAD systems even down to CSV files, and we have a full wizard for getting this information in. Copy project facilities. Once you've created a project, you can copy data from one project to another to save an awful lot of time and manual intervention. CMPIC ShipConstructor interface. As I've talked about this before, we're using both. We have examples of where both HVAC and space allocation functionality is being used to create the cableways, which are then used within our project for the logical cable routing. We also have procedures whereby the cable routes that have been created will be changed automatically if there's a change to the topology of the cable trays. So if on day one you start routing cables and you're using hangers that are there on day one, but on day 37 those hangers have disappeared or they're in a different position or whatever, then as part of the procedure of moving the data from the CAD system, ShipConstructor, into CMPIC, our system looks for cable routes that have been changed, and if it can repair them, it will repair them automatically. Because of the breadth of our customer base, inevitably they're using a variety of CAD systems. So we work extremely closely with ShipConstructor and the InnovMarine guys who are ShipConstructor representatives. Configuration management. This is where we're looking at sister ships. So where you've got more than one ship in a class, you can actually use CMPIC to reduce the amount of manual intervention in managing cables on more than one ship. So that you have the class, and then within the class you've got individual hulls which may or may not differ from the class. So what we're talking about is taking a lot of management out of the job and let the database do the job. So if you've got ship to specific cables, you can have ship to specific cables which are mixed with class cables that are the same across the entire class of ships. And it's this functionality that's used by, I think, InnovMarine, amongst others. They're using configuration management there. Okay, so basically what we're saying is we manage all the differences in configuration of cabling across the design. Just to finish off, we have another product that we brought out over the last couple of years. This is for two things. One is for cabling infrastructure management. More interesting in this environment is this is now being used in a couple of areas. One is for the Type 26 global combat ship that's being built, and they are using it for basically for managing the combat systems, the fibre optic and copper cables involved in that. So this is, they've got about 5,000 fibre optic outers. This is not the individual fibres, but the outers. About 1,500 different devices between those fibre optic cables. And we have a database that sits alongside CMPIC that manages that whole process. And basically, this replaced a humongous and unmanageable set of Excel spreadsheets that they've been using for the last few years to have the same level of data. So in summary, we've been around a long time. Cable management is what we do. It's all we do. We specialise in it, and we'd love to talk to people about it if any of this has been of interest. If it's not of interest to you, then by all means pass on the details of InnovMarine and ourselves onto your electrical colleagues and see if they'd like to talk further. Okay, I'm now going to pass on to Brent Tarr from Hostel. Yeah. So you'll be the mic either. No. Right across.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Brent Tarr, Chief Electrical Engineer at Hostel. Are there any people over here that are decision makers, do softwares or anything like that? Or just you are? Okay. We'll see there's more electrical people here. So anyway, we saw the need to go to a different database for running cables and managing cables. A lot of shipyards have in-house databases that become very cumbersome. A lot of silos operating, and this is what drove us in this direction. We met with Cloudis, I think 2.5 to 3 years ago. Did a pilot program, and after the pilot program, we ran a test program with Cloud, and this is where we are today. Theoretically, it should be launched for production in about 4 more weeks, and then we'll move on to another phase. So in implementing cable management, when introducing new technology across functional group, it is best to communicate. Good, there you go. It's best to communicate all the objectives, and while we move into this new technology, those are objectives you've got to discuss. What is the immediate vision and what is the future vision? Right now we're in the immediate vision. Future vision will be 2019. It is also critical that participants are given a forum in which to speak. Those are all your stakeholders. Understand their concerns and define the success of what they would like to see. Provide an understanding of scope on how to proceed by participants and promote successful project management and acceptance of change. So a lot of people get very comfortable in what they do day to day. So they don't like change. They have their security blankets of how they do things. So change is very difficult to accept. But in data technology, the digital thread is where I believe we should be going. It'll save time, save money, and this is why we also took this path to try and culminate a lot of sporadic databases. Build critical use cases to support functional gains for Austal. So we had to define all the stakeholders. It's obviously the engineering group, production control, production, logistics, other disciplines. So everybody's got to have their work in to make sure it's a success. Training and coaching is also critical. So we had training way about a year ago, and then since then we've been coaching other entities within the whole gamut, the production control. So that's a continuous thing. It's training and coaching. Another thing is to create understanding of the benefits of ownership. So if you can sell the new enterprise to a department, person that operate in an old manner, that they will become a subject matter expert, and let them own it and adapt it to what they want to see and how they'd like to work. I think it will be very successful. If you don't give them ownership, you will end up with pushback. We've seen that. So, our goal was to involve as many people as possible in this. It does improve efficiency as well. So another thing is to manage corporate culture. Appreciation of other business units are also needed. So IT is another corporate business unit. You've got to involve them. They've got to understand what their needs are. They've got to understand, is the hardware sufficient? Do they have enough licenses? Software. So you have a lot of stakeholders. Breaking through the comfort zones, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of people get comfortable in the spreadsheets, and we know that it can be very cumbersome. At the end of the day, you have a lot of disparate databases. So at one point in time, we had one database and we had all these spreadsheets just hanging off it. So nothing was communicated with everything. With the CMPIC, we were able to bring it all together, isolate those disparate databases, replace those disparate databases, and have it all in-house so that we have one point of entry for data. Learning what drives requirements and defining changes to requirements. What is new and what is obsolete? That's defining obsolete spreadsheets, the new parameters within the CMPIC. What requirements become part of the new system? What new system-driven requirements become new levels of visibility and information? So, going through this was a lot of prep work. ShipConstructor was our primary configuration that we interface to. First of all, we had to dump solids that we had in ShipConstructor. We had create smart parts. We developed a catalog for the hangers. Of course, we had to get planning involved with the nomenclature for the cattle hangers. Space allocation was very, had a big part to play with us. And there was a lot of work up front that we had to do because we never had electric modules before, which now we do. So that's proved to be very fruitful. The other part was also getting other disciplines involved. So I don't know how your other yards work it, but we have some of our equipment that sits on mechanical compartment arrangements. Some panels sit on their drawings. So there are inputs and outputs to each electrical device that have to be managed. So when you route the cable, it's all automatic. It sees the device in ShipCon, it sees the component where it hooks to in ShipCon, and will route the cable automatically within Cloudis and pull the database the data from ShipCon. So the CMPIC prep work, we have a master equipment list which has all of our equipment for electrical is inputted in there. Everything has a database in there. So we generate an interface from CMPIC to the metal, and that would pull the BLM, or the compartment number, or the module number, or the electrical ID number, pull all that information, and that would be used in line with ShipConstructor, putting that information on ShipConstructor. We had to upload all the cable types. That was the only real big thing, but that was all uploaded by spreadsheet, so it was very, very quick. We were able to input all the penetrations, develop unique spools for cables, which we did. So we have all the cables, all the cable types with spool unique ID numbers, which can be used for cable management. Down to millions, basically. So what CMPIC enables us to do volume reports, and we can set our parameters exactly where we need them to be, penetrations, as well as cablewear requirements, splitting the data cables from the power cables, upper run and lower run, whatever parameters you want, you can set it with CMPIC. So that was a lot of prep work we were going to do. It did take a lot of the time, but you had to make sure all those facts were there. Prior to going live, we did run a few cables manually to validate that the lengths were as per they were for the design, and that was the tedious part. I'll just validate the lengths were correct, but after that's pretty much automatic. Going live, we plan to go live in about 3 weeks' time. When I say live in production, and see what happens there. I think we have a lot of our good pieces out there. We have to contact with that now, get everybody in the loop, working that. I believe we'll be very, very successful. And I hope next year there'll be some electrical people here. So we could tell a different story next year. Because this time next year we would have been running a live for 12 months. We would have been through to phase 2 already, which would be integrating more disparate databases within CMPIC, like SK Power Tools, other databases. So the whole thing is to try and pull everything together so you have one truth of source. The objective is to have ShipConstructor truth of source. And if one piece gets updated, all different entities will get flagged, and the SMEs in those different areas will be notified as to what the changes. Any questions?
Thanks very much, Brent. Just to practice, we've got just a couple minutes left. One of the key takeaways, I think, from, or I believe, from Brent's presentation is how many of us have been involved in trying to develop a business case for the acquisition of a piece of software, right? You know, we have to put those measurement metrics in there so that we know we achieve our success milestones. You know, if you're putting a business case together for a piece of equipment on the shop floor, we know speeds and feeds, we know that it works faster, it's going to allow us to produce parts quicker, and so measuring that is a lot easier. When it comes to something like software, it's not always that easy. So I believe in Brent's presentation, there's some great ideas there for any of us, you know, who have to put together a business case for the implementation of a piece of software. This happens to be CMPIC, so it was great, worked very well for us, so as Brent said. Let's all be back here in a year and hear how they've achieved their success milestone. And I know I'm certainly looking forward to that. So thank you very much for that. And any further questions? Okay. If not, as Brent said, as Ian said, we're outside. Come visit us. If you want to take some information back to your electrical departments, we really appreciate it. And give us an opportunity to share some of what we've got with them as well. Thank you very much.